Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Desiree Duffy, and it is time for the Books That Make You show. And today, we are talking about books that make you connect to the element calcium. Now, there are many things that connect us in our world, but sometimes we fail to see the most fundamental and perhaps the most important things. Take the element of calcium, for example. Our guest today, Korynn Newville, did just that in her book, Indiscernible Elements, Calcium. Korynn is an architectural designer, an artist, and an author. And she sees the world and the future of architecture and everything that's evolving and changing that we're living through right now with a very unique perspective. And that is through the element of calcium. Calcium, after all, is in us and it's all around us. It's in this chalk on the wall behind me, for example. Now, her thought-provoking book explores the path that a molecule can take through the various stages of life and death. And it's all from the perspective of calcium. Indiscernible Elements, Calcium is comprised of detailed illustrations and poetry and dialogue. Korynn's passion for the environment is the catalyst that led her to writing and to her activism as well. She has a message of hope, connection, and adaptation to share with the world. And we are going to hear all about it right now. Korynn, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much, Desiree, for that introduction.
You bet. Thank you for writing this book. It's amazing. And it is unpacking the world and showing us this just fundamental perspective through the lens of calcium as an element because it connects us. So can you talk about that? Can you tell us how does calcium connect us?
Yeah, in my book, I show how calcium connects humans, the built environment, and the earth. So the same element, calcium, which is a metal, is in the earth's core, and calcium is in our bones, and calcium makes up the structure of architecture in our built environment.
Why is it that you chose calcium as the element to feature? Why out of all the elements that are out there? What's special about it?
Calcium to me represents a cycle, and I started exploring that cycle of what happens when a human passes away, or any living organism for that matter. And the calcium that is from our bones, and we have more calcium than just our bones, but when that goes into the earth, it is used to make plants and it's the structure of plants. And that's how I really started to dive into what it was.
And that was it. You were looking at death, which can sound a little bit morbid in some ways, but it sounds like you saw the beauty in that. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey in writing this book? Tell us what led to you taking on this topic in this avant-garde way.
Yeah, what I love about calcium and its cycle is that's also how I see death is an opportunity to begin a new life. So when someone passes away and the calcium goes into the ground, well, then that is turning into grass or as part of a tree or as part of a leaf. So the cycle is what really brings this hopeful perspective. And through the book, it takes you on a journey of a grief pattern is how I intended to write it. So we go through these stages of mourning, accepting, and being able to move on.
And can you talk about this idea of being comfortable? Because here I am. I'm very comfortable and cozy right now. I've got my tea. And I think there's probably some calcium in my ceramic mug, right? There's calcium in my tea.
Probably.
There's calcium here, calcium here. Um, we have this sense of comfort, don't we, in our interior
Mm-hmm.
spaces? I mean, right now it's very cold outside, but I'm in here. I'm warm. I don't have to worry about that. But can you unpack a little bit why maybe people should be a little less comfortable in their living spaces?
Yeah, I think as our journey starts to ascend with climate change and the changes we'll have to make, I think there will be a period of time where people are uncomfortable with the changes. And we might be uncomfortable physically as well. And I would say we already are because of the negative side effects of climate change. Things are different, our weather patterns are different. And in order to get better, we have to stay uncomfortable for a while we make changes. And the more we are very used to being comfortable, like you're saying, and it's going to take an effort from everyone to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I think that's a fundamental message in your beautiful book, by the way. I just want to show some of the art because it's comprised of your art. It's also got your words. I know people probably can't read that. That's why they should get the book because it's poetry and it's thoughts and it's so much imagery that takes us on this wonderful journey. But at the core, you've got a really powerful message about the changing climate and sustainability. And some of the companies and corporations who are out there right now are doing a lot of innovative things. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the really cool and hopeful and innovative things that are happening right now in the world?
Yeah. So one of my favorites is Scape Studios, and I discovered them back in 2017 when this journey of this book started. And what I love about them is that they have the approach of we're not designing just for humans, we're designing for all living organisms. And they have this project that I was introduced to, Oyster Texture. And it's these docks on Brooklyn, New York. And they, on the underside of the docks, there's habitat for oysters. And then, of course, on the upside of the dock, that's where humans can be. And they can help with these oyster habitats. And they're bringing back oyster life to New York, which has decreased over the years. And where I live in Victor, Idaho, we have a couple of firms that I love what they're doing. One is Love Shack, and they are a small firm located here in Bozeman, and they are certified in passive housing, which, if you aren't unfamiliar, passive housing is a net zero way of design. So they take a site and where a house or a store is located, and they study the site to its maximum potential. And they create a beautiful environment that is net zero, has a lot of light, is very careful about their materials that they choose. And another firm is in Jackson, Wyoming, and they are called Vera Iconica Architecture, and they're all about wellness in architecture. So they choose materials that are non-toxic, that actually have a positive psychology effect on humans, and they are well aware of the cycle of that material as well. So where is that material going to go if the building gets demolished in 50 years or so? They understand that cycle, and they also understand the cycle of where that material is coming to them as well. So they do the research of the carbon footprint, and they really have, all three of these firms have a very holistic view of what and how and where is going to happen with these.
Yeah, and you talk about that cycle, and it just harkens back to what you're talking about in the beginning too, and this whole idea of death and things renewing, and in a lot of ways being reborn. It's really beautiful. Do you see death differently after you've analyzed it through the lens of calcium? How do you see death now compared to how you maybe once saw it?
Yeah. I see death as, again, a possibility, but an opportunity into making change. That's not necessarily speaking specifically about a person. I don't want to say a person passing away is something positive. It's more talking about the world and how we are used to living and how we need to make changes. And it's talking about letting go and being able to accept and introduce new things into our lives and making that change.
You say that people fight too much over land. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think that fighting over land is really complicated. I mean, we hear it almost every day over the news. And climate change is part of that. Because we fight for our natural resources within land, we strive for that because it offers power and wealth. And if we, let's say we didn't fight over natural resources, let's say we knew that those natural resources aren't ours, that they are part of the earth's, what would that look like? What would that sharing and caring of these natural resources be like? And how would our world be different if we just shared the energy that we put into wanting control over these things?
Yeah, that's incredibly imaginative because it does evoke just a whole different world, because like you say, so much is predicated on land and wealth and having mine. There's this sense of entitlement. I own the land. But there's many people and cultures and societies that have been on this planet before that just didn't even look at it that way. And maybe that's the thing that's destroying our world and is bringing on the changing climate, because it's happening, whether you like it or not. And I really appreciate your message that, hey, we need to adapt to this. The world is changing, the climate's changing, the earth is changing, and here we are. One of the things that you bring up is environmental racism and how that impacts people, not just here in the United States, but in other areas of the world as well. Can you tell us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, on the scale of the US, it's evident everywhere. And how that happens is some sort of hazardous, let's say like a hazardous plant or a landfill gets put in next to a low income neighborhood within a city. And that those hazardous materials are being putting pollution into the air. Well, then those low-income neighborhoods are located so near that they are getting just terrible negative effects. They are at more risk for cancer, asthma, and the list can go on. And that is within the United States. And then we think about those, the pollution that we're putting into the air and how that spreads throughout all the world. And then we look at a country that, relies on farming, and they rely on their country's unique ability for some resource to share with the world. And now those are being damaged by flooding and earthquakes and high heat, and they're not able to grow what they once did. So then we go into a larger problem of climate migration, where these people are trying to move to a different location where there's still opportunity, and because they no longer have opportunity at home, they need to move on because of climate change.
Yeah. And it's the United States and a lot of the Western world that has created this. If you think back to the Industrial Revolution, who was at the charge of that? The United States was built basically on the backs of people and other nations and the planet, the earth, like you said. And now there's areas and people in the world that are becoming uninhabitable. And, the sustainability factor is just looming so huge right now. And I appreciate you bringing that to the forefront with your book. As an architectural designer, can you talk a little bit more about the future in the world of architecture? What do you think we're going to be building tomorrow, or the spaces people will be living in the future?
Well, a lot like Scape Studios, and I hope that we design for not just humans, that we look beyond ourselves and we design for other organisms in the world and actually try to, increase better habitat. And so I also don't think there's one solution. I think there's room for many solutions and room for high-tech versions and rooms for more of an analog version of it being simple. And I don't think there's a right or wrong, and we're at the point where we need all of it. And one thing could help the other.
Yeah, exactly. Now, how about the future for you, Korynn? What are you working on? Will we be seeing more books, other elements? What's happening?
Yeah, like my book, we talk about calcium as a small scale item, right? We talk about it as being one element, and it can bring this this sense of scale so tiny. And I would love to expand that and go and explore different scales with different elements.
Now, a question I like to ask authors a lot of times is, if you could hand this book to anybody in the world, you cannot say Oprah. Do not say Oprah.
Okay.
It's the only rule. But if you could hand this book to anybody in the world right now and be guaranteed that they would read it cover to cover, who would you give your book to?
Donna Haraway. She, I mentioned her in my book, but she's really what drove me, I guess, to expand on this element. Her book, Staying with the Trouble, I feel is, or was a way for me to put my imagination into some form of words. And I just love her way of thinking. So no, it wouldn't be Oprah, even though that'd be nice.
Dear Oprah, you cannot have this book. This is not for you. This is for Donna. I love that. I love that. Well, and where we find inspiration, right? The people that give us that ability to kind of see the world differently, and then we build upon that. That's such an amazing thing. Do you have any thoughts or advice or tips for other artists, creatives, writers out there that you would like to tell them now that you have written your book? Anybody or anything that you want to say to people to help inspire them?
Other than keep going. I feel like that's a very common advice line. Yeah, I think I was surprised on how, I'm a visionary artist or a visual artist. But I got most of my inspiration from words and books because they increase my imagination. So I would say just don't stick to your medium that you're in. You can gather inspiration from various things and things around you.
I think that's good advice. And sometimes, obviously, with this show, we have a lot of authors, a lot of writers who listen, a lot of people who love to read. So it is very word centric. Mm-hmm. And what you did was you just took something that seemed not connected and you drew the connection. And it seems like sometimes that's exactly the type of thing that can inspire or motivate a creator. If you're stuck and you've got that thing called writer's block, or you're looking for the muse, we hear of all of those types of things, and it's because we need something to kind of motivate us. So it's neat that you took something like calcium and turned it into the thing that gave your entire book meaning and inspiration. And, you're just pulling it back to who we are as human beings and what our world is made of and what we are made of. That was really, really brilliant. Do you hear that a lot? What do people say? What do they tell you about your book?
That it is a unique perspective. And often the number one question is, how did you make that connection? So I explain it as I got a not so great comment back from an advisor when I was doing my architectural thesis. And I went home and was just like, what am I going to do? Panic, panic, panic. And then I went down to the simplest form, which I talked about earlier about someone passing away and, what happens to a body at that time. And sometimes when you break something down so simple, it opens up because you're not stuck in such a little peephole. And that's what happened. It just started to expand. And I think people are most surprised at the end when they read it. Like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that the drywall is calcium, that concrete's calcium, that my teeth are calcium, that the earth is calcium. And it's just not something that you think about every day.
Yeah, you're right. The world and writing, the things that we do on a regular basis, everything, it feels overwhelming sometimes. It seems so complicated, so complex. There's so much going on. It can almost feel overwhelming. But I feel there's something very calming and serene about the simplicity and the way you so eloquently put it. And in calcium, it's brilliant, Korynn. absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you bet. You bet. So where can people go to find the book? Which, by the way, I might add, I feel like this book, all books have that place in our house, right? Some of them go on the bookshelf. Some of them go on the nightstand. Some of them go on the coffee table. We've all heard the term coffee table book, right? Some of them might go into our kids' room because we want them to have, whether they have a little study area, their classroom, etc. I feel like this book fits into all of those spaces. It's not just for coffee tables. It's not just for the nightstand. It fits everywhere. So congratulations on having such a diverse book in that capacity. So can you tell people where they can go to find it? You are welcome. Where they can find you online, social media. Give us all your details.
Yeah. So it's published by the Black Hat Press, which is in Minnesota. It's a small women-owned press. She's great. You can find it on their website, theblackhatpress.com. And then you can find me at Korynville, which is on Instagram. And you can also find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Fantastic. Korynn Newville, the author of Indiscernible Elements, Calcium. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Books That Make You show. I appreciate you spending time with us.
Thank you so much.
You bet. And thank you, everybody, for being here as well. You can find out more about us on our website. It is booksthatmakeyou.com. Also, we are on Facebook, Instagram, and you can subscribe to our Webby Award-winning newsletter when you visit our website. And don't forget, obviously, we're on YouTube. You may be watching us there. If you're listening right now, come on over to our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, ring the bell, get notifications. That way you never miss a Books That Make You show and conversations with authors and writers and creators like Korynn. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.